The Dead Sea Scrolls, a window into the past or a carefully curated lie. It's hard to imagine anything being both centuries old and trending on Twitter. But that's the kind of impact the Dead Sea Scrolls had when they first hit the scene in 2007. People were shocked by what they discovered, and it's not hard to see why. If you think finding one ancient scroll is rare, try finding a whole library of them stashed away in caves near the Dead Sea. And these aren't your average scrolls. They rewrite history. They challenge everything we know about the origins of Judaism and Christianity, and they open up questions about what the Bible got right, what it got wrong, and what it might have left out on purpose. Imagine being an archaeologist in the 1940s, hunting for relics in the Judean desert. There's pottery, old coins, bits of mosaic. But then you stumble onto something that changes everything. Scrolling through the landscape, you literally find a cave filled with jars. Not the sort you put jam in, mind you, but clay jars sealed tight, meant to protect fragile scrolls inside. The discovery of the first Dead Sea Scroll in 1847, Qumran Cave No. 1, marked a turning point in biblical studies. We're talking about an event that shook up our understanding of history and religion, as much as if someone found Shakespeare's lost works in a garage sale pile. The significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls is enormous. They read like a secret stash of historical treasures locked away for millennia, and now opened up for us to see. But what makes them so important? Here's the deal. Up until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, biblical scholars relied on a handful of ancient texts to piece together the story of Judaism. The oldest complete copy of the Hebrew Bible we had was the Aleppo Codex from the 10th century CE, but the Dead Sea Scrolls turned that around. They pushed the timeline back hundreds of years. Suddenly we had a much closer window into the past, a chance to read scriptures as they were crafted at the dawn of Christianity. But it's not just the age of the scrolls that makes them so important, it's also what's written on them, or more specifically, what's not written. Scholars can debate this forever, but here's the gist. Most of the scrolls we found are copies of books that later became part of the Old Testament. The catch is they're copies from about 200 years before the Christian era. That means we can compare early versions of Genesis, Exodus and Isaiah with the texts we have today. And guess what? We find differences. Some are small, like spelling tweaks or wording changes. Others, well, they raise eyebrows. For instance, the Great Isaiah Scroll, one of the longest and most intact scrolls ever found, gives us an earlier version of Isaiah than any other manuscript. It's so significant it could change how we understand the entire book. Now, you might be thinking, big deal. It's just a slightly different version of a story I already know. But hold on. Imagine reading Romeo and Juliet and finding that instead of Romeo killing himself after thinking Juliet's dead, she stabs him and dies in his arms. Would that be a small change or a huge one? Exactly. Finding different versions of the Bible isn't just an academic curiosity. It challenges how we think about the scriptures. How did these differences pop up? Who decided which stories made it into the Bible and which didn't? And hey, if things we consider holy today were rewritten over time, what else might have been changed or even left out completely? The Dead Sea Scrolls turn history into a whodunit. Why did ancient scribes make those changes? Was it a game of telephone where stories twisted as they were passed down? Did religious leaders edit the text to push certain beliefs or obscure others? Or maybe it was a mix of everything. Here's where things get really intriguing. The Dead Sea Scrolls weren't just copies of books that became the Bible. They also contain texts that didn't make the cut. We're talking about stuff like the Book of Enoch, a tale of angels, fallen stars and giants on earth. And it's not your typical bedtime story. It rewrites our understanding of the universe and humanity's place in it. Then there are the community rule and the war of the sons of light and the sons of darkness. These scrolls offer a glimpse into the beliefs and daily life of the sect that lived near the caves. They tell us about a secretive group who broke away from mainstream Judaism, believing the rest of the religious world had gone astray. But it's not all ancient history. Scholars argue that this break, this rebellion against the norm, might have been the spark that ignited early Christianity. Was Jesus a son of light? Did he talk about a final battle between good and evil? And how did those beliefs take root and spread? The Dead Sea Scrolls help us explore these questions, showing us that Christianity wasn't born in a vacuum. It grew out of a complex web of Jewish sects, each trying to chart its path to God. So we have older versions of biblical stories, books left out of the Bible, and hints at how Christianity took shape. But the Dead Sea Scrolls have another layer, one that adds intrigue and controversy in equal measure. While archaeologists were busy uncovering ancient texts, a handful of individuals quietly worked on translating and analyzing the scrolls. We're talking about a select few, not academics, not scholars, but members of conservative religious groups. And this raises a big question. Why? Why were they involved in such an important historical find? Some say it was about protecting tradition, making sure the scrolls didn't undermine religious beliefs. Others whisper about keeping secrets hidden, making sure the public didn't learn something that could shake the foundations of faith. Let's break it down. On the one hand, you have groups eager to explore their history and roots. On the other, you have fears about challenging long-held beliefs. And in the middle sits the truth, somewhere. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of various communities living near the caves where the scrolls were found. One of the most intriguing was a sect known as the Essenes. Their lifestyle was unique. Their beliefs were strict and their commitment to their faith was unwavering. Imagine living a life secluded from the rest of the world, focusing solely on your spiritual journey, waiting for a savior to lead you to a better place. That's what the Essene life was all about. These folks weren't your average Jews. They broke away from the larger community, seeking a purer form of faith. And let's face it, when people start calling themselves the sons of light and talking about a cosmic battle between good and evil, you know they mean business. But here's where things get really interesting. Some scholars believe that this idea of an impending battle, this vision of good versus evil, might have played a role in shaping the narrative of Christianity. Did Jesus and his followers pick up on these beliefs, adapt them, amplify them? The Dead Sea Scrolls give us a glimpse into a world where apocalyptic thinking was alive and well, where the expectation of a final showdown between light and darkness was a driving force. And while we can't say for sure how much influence these ideas had on Christianity, we can see how they coexisted, how they intertwined, and how they offered a lens through which the birth of a new religion could emerge. Think about it. In a world where people believed in an imminent battle between good and evil, where they expected a savior to lead them to victory, the message of Jesus could have resonated deeply. His teachings, his miracles, his eventual crucifixion and resurrection could have been seen as part of this larger narrative, a narrative that promised a final showdown and the triumph of good. The Dead Sea Scrolls don't explicitly tell us this, but they paint a backdrop against which we can see how these ideas might have taken root, how they could have evolved, and how they might have inspired some of the earliest Christians. And this is where the real mystery lies, not in the scrolls themselves, but in how we interpret them, how we weave them into the tapestry of history, and how we let them shape our understanding of the past and the present. So next time you hear about the Dead Sea Scrolls, don't just think of them as dusty old papers in a museum. Think of them as threads in a vast tapestry, a tapestry that tells the story of a world where new religions were born, where ancient communities sought solace in caves, and where the battle between good and evil was more than just a story. It was a way of life. It's a story worth knowing, because it reminds us that history is never straightforward. It's a story worth telling, because it challenges us to look beyond the surface, to dig deeper into the layers of our past. And it's a story worth preserving, because it's a story that's still being written.